Creation Theories and the Reality of the World. Sri Ramana had little or no interest in the theoretical side of spirituality. His principal concern was to bring people to an awareness of the self, and to achieve this end, he always insisted that practice was more important than speculation. He discouraged questions of a theoretical nature either by remaining silent when they were asked, or by asking the questioner to find the source of the I that was asking the question. Occasionally he would relent and give detailed expositions on various aspects of philosophy. But if his questioners persisted too long with their queries, or if the conversation veered towards sterile intellectualism, he would change the subject and direct the attention of his questioners towards more practical matters. Many of these philosophical conversations centered around the nature and origin of the physical world, since Sri Ramana was known to have views which were totally at variance with the common-sense view of the world. As with most other topics, he tailored his statements to conform to the different levels of understanding he encountered in his questioners. But even so, almost all his ideas were radical refutations of the concepts of physical reality that most people cherish. Sri Ramana adopted 3 different standpoints when he spoke about the nature of the physical world. He advocated all of them at different times, but it is clear from his general comments on the subject that he only considered the first 2 theories given below to be either true or useful. Ajatavada, the theory of non-causality. This is an ancient Hindu doctrine which states that the creation of the world never happened at all. It is a complete denial of all causality in the physical world. Sri Ramana endorsed this view by saying that it is in the Jnani's experience that nothing ever comes into existence or ceases to be because the self alone exists as the sole unchanging reality. It is a corollary of this theory that time, space, cause, and effect, essential components of all creation theories, exist only in the minds of Jnanis, and the experience of the self reveals their non-existence. This theory is not a denial of the reality of the world, only of the creative process which brought it into existence. Speaking from his own experience, Sri Ramana said that the Jnani is aware that the world is real, not as an assemblage of interacting matter and energy, but as an uncaused appearance in the self. He enlarged on this by saying that because the real nature or substratum of this appearance is identical with the beingness of the self, it necessarily partakes of its reality. That is to say, the world is not real to the Jnani simply because it appears, but only because the real nature of the appearance is inseparable from the self. The Ajnani, on the other hand, is totally unaware of the unitary nature and source of the world, and as a consequence his mind constructs an illusory world of separate, interacting objects by persistently misinterpreting the sense impressions it receives. Sri Ramana pointed out that this view of the world has no more reality than a dream, since it superimposes a creation of the mind on the reality of the self. He summarized the difference between the Jnanis and the Ajnanis' standpoint by saying that the world is unreal if it is perceived by the mind as a collection of discrete objects, and real when it is directly experienced as an appearance in the self. 2. Drishti Srishti Vada. If his questioners found the idea of ajata or non-causality impossible to assimilate, he would teach them that the world comes into existence simultaneously with the appearance of the I-thought, and that it ceases to exist when the I-thought is absent. This theory is known as Drishti Srishti, or simultaneous creation, and it says in effect that the world which appears to an Ajnani is a product of the mind that perceives it, and that in the absence of that mind it ceases to exist. The theory is true insofar as the mind does create an imaginary world for itself, but from the standpoint of the self, an imaginary I creating an imaginary world is no creation at all. and so the doctrine of Ajata is not subverted. Although Sri Ramana sometimes said that the Dristi Sristi was not the ultimate truth about creation, he encouraged his followers to accept it as a working hypothesis. He justified this approach by saying that if one can consistently regard the world as an unreal creation of the mind, then it loses its attraction, and it becomes easier to maintain an undistracted awareness of the I thought. 3. Srishti Dristivana, gradual creation. This is the common sense view which holds that the world is an objective reality governed by laws of cause and effect which can be traced back to a single act of creation. It includes virtually all Western ideas on the subject from the Big Bang theory to the biblical account in Genesis. Sri Ramana only invoked theories of this nature when he was talking to questioners who were unwilling to accept the implications of Ajata and Dristi Sristi theories. Even then, he would usually point out that such theories should not be taken too seriously, as they were only promulgated to satisfy intellectual curiosity. Literally, Dristi Sristi means that the world only exists when it is perceived, whereas Srishti Dristi means that the world existed prior to anyone's perception of it. Although the former theory sounds perverse, Sri Ramana insisted that serious seekers should be satisfied with it, partly because it is a close approximation of the truth, and partly because it is the most beneficial attitude to adopt if one is seriously interested in realizing the self. How has Srishti, creation, come about? Some say it is predestined. Others say it is the Lord's lila, or sport. What is the truth? Various accounts are given in books. But is there creation? Only if there is creation do we have to explain how it came about. We may not know about all these theories, but we certainly know that we exist. Why not know the I and then see if there is a creation? In the Vedanta of Sri Sankaracharya, the principle of the creation of the world has been accepted for the sake of beginners, but for the advanced, the principle of non-creation is put forward. What is your view on this matter? There is no dissolution or creation, no one in bondage nor anyone pursuing spiritual practices. There is no one desiring liberation, nor anyone liberated. This is the absolute truth. This sloka appears in the second chapter of Gaudapadha's Karika. One who is established in the self sees this by his knowledge of reality. Is not the self the cause of this world we see around us? Self itself appears as the world of diverse names and forms. However, self does not act as the efficient cause, Nimitta Karana, creating, sustaining, and destroying it. Do not ask, why does the confusion of self, not knowing the truth that itself appears as the world, arise? If indeed you inquire, to whom does this confusion occur, it will be discovered that no such confusion ever existed for self. You seem to be an exponent of the Ajata doctrine of Advaita Vedanta. I do not teach only the Ajata doctrine. I approve of all schools. The same truth has to be expressed in different ways to suit the capacity of the hearer. The Ajata doctrine says, nothing exists except the one reality. There is no birth or death, no projection or drawing in, no seeker, no bondage, no liberation. The one unity alone exists. To such as find it difficult to grasp this truth and who ask, how can we ignore this solid world we see all around us? The dream experience is pointed out, and they are told, all that you see depends on the seer. Apart from the seer, there is no seen. This is called the Dristi Srishti Vada, or the argument that one first creates out of one's mind, and then sees what one's mind itself has created. Some people cannot grasp even this, and they continue to argue in the following terms. The dream experience is so short while the world always exists. The dream experience was limited to me, but the world is felt and seen not only by me, but by so many others. We cannot call such a world non-existent. When people argue in this way, they can be given a srishti-drishti theory. For example, God first created such and such a thing, out of such and such an element, and then something else was created, and so on. That alone will satisfy this class. Their minds are otherwise not satisfied, and they ask themselves, how can all geography, all maps, all sciences, stars, planets, and the rules governing or relating to them, and all knowledge be totally untrue? To such it is best to say, yes, God created all this, and so you see it. But all these cannot be true. Only one doctrine can be true. All these theories are only to suit the capacity of the learner. The absolute can only be one. The Vedanta says that the cosmos springs into view simultaneously with the seer, and that there is no detailed process of creation. This is said to be yugapat srishti, instantaneous creation. It is quite similar to the creations in dream, where the experiencer springs up simultaneously with the objects of experience. When this is told, some people are not satisfied, for they are deeply rooted in objective knowledge. They seek to find out how there can be sudden creation. They argue that an effect must be preceded by a cause. In short, they desire an explanation for the existence of the world which they see around them. Then the srutis, scriptures, try to satisfy their curiosity by theories of creation. This method of dealing with the subject of creation is called krama srishti, gradual creation. But the true seeker can be content with yugapat srishti, instantaneous creation. What is the purpose of creation? It is to give rise to this question, investigate the answer to this question, and finally abide in the supreme, or rather the primal source of all, the self. The investigation will resolve itself into a quest for the self, and it will cease only after the non-self is sifted away, and the self realized in its purity and glory. There may be any number of theories of creation. All of them extend outwardly. There will be no limit to them because time and space are unlimited. They are, however, only in the mind. If you see the mind, time and space are transcended, and the self is realized. Creation is explained scientifically or logically to one's own satisfaction. But is there any finality about it? Such explanations are called krama srishti, gradual creation. On the other hand, drishti srishti, simultaneous creation, is yugapat srishti. Without the seer, there are no objects seen. Find the seer, and the creation is comprised in him. Why look outward and go on explaining the phenomena which are endless? The Vedas contain conflicting accounts of cosmogony. Ether is said to be the first creation in one place, vital energy, prana, in another, something else in yet another, water in still another, and so on. How are these to be reconciled? Do these impair the credibility of the Vedas? Different seers saw different aspects of truth at different times, each emphasizing one view. Why do you worry about their conflicting statements? The essential aim of the Vedas is to teach us the nature of the imperishable Atman and show us that we are that. I am satisfied with that portion. Then treat all the rest as arthavada, auxiliary arguments, or expositions for the sake of the ignorant who seek to trace the genesis of things. I form part of the creation and so remain dependent. I cannot solve the riddle of creation until I become independent. Yet I ask Sri Bhagavan, should he not answer the question for me? Yes, it is Bhagavan that says, become independent and solve the riddle yourself. It is for you to do it. Again, where are you now that you ask this question? Are you in the world, or is the world within you? You must admit that the world is not perceived in your sleep, although you cannot deny your existence then. The world appears when you wake up. So where is it? Clearly the world is your thought. Thoughts are your projections. The I is first created, and then the world. The world is created by the I, which in turn rises up from the self. The riddle of the creation of the world is thus solved, if you solve the creation of the I. So I say, find yourself. Again, does the world come and ask you, why do I exist? How was I created? Is it you who ask the question? The questioner must establish the relationship between the world and himself. He must admit that the world is his own imagination. Who imagines it? Let him again find the I and then the self. Moreover, all the scientific and theological explanations do not harmonize. The diversities in such theories clearly show the uselessness of seeking such explanations. Such explanations are purely mental or intellectual and nothing more. Still, all of them are true according to the standpoint of the individual. There is no creation in the state of realization. When one sees the world, one does not see oneself. When one sees the self, the world is not seen. So see the self and realize that there has been no creation. Brahman is real. The world, Jagat, is illusion, is the stock phrase of Sri Sankaracharya. Yet others say the world is reality, which is true. Both statements are true. They refer to different stages of development and are spoken from different points of view. The aspirant, Abhyasi, starts with the definition. That which is real exists always. Then he eliminates the world as unreal because it is changing. The seeker ultimately reaches the self and there finds unity as the prevailing note. Then, that which was originally rejected as being unreal is found to be part of the unity. Absorbed in the reality, the world also is real. There is only being in self-realization and nothing but being. Sri Bhagavan often says that Maya, illusion, and reality are the same. How can that be? Sanskara was criticized for his views on Maya without being understood. He said that 1. Brahman is real. 2. The universe is unreal. And 3. The universe is Brahman. He did not stop at the second because the third explains the other two. It signifies that the universe is real if perceived as the self, and unreal if perceived apart from the self. Hence Maya and reality are one and the same. So the world is not really illusory? At the level of the spiritual seeker, you have got to say that the world is an illusion. There is no other way. When a man forgets that he is Brahman, who is real, permanent, and omnipresent, and deludes himself into thinking that he is a body in the universe which is filled with bodies that are transitory, and labors under that delusion, you have got to remind him that the world is unreal and a delusion. Why? Because his vision, which has forgotten its own self, is dwelling in the external, material universe. It will not turn inwards into introspection unless you impress on him that all this external material universe is unreal. When once he realizes his own self, he will know that there is nothing other than his own self, and he will come to look upon the whole universe as Brahman. There is no universe without the self. So long as a man does not see the self, which is the origin of all, but looks only at the external world as real and permanent, you have to tell him that all this external universe is an illusion. You cannot help it. Take a paper. We see only the script, and nobody notices the paper on which the script is written. The paper is there, whether the script on it is there or not. To those who look upon the script as real, you have to say that it is unreal, an illusion, since it rests upon the paper. The wise man looks upon both the paper and script as one. So also with Brahman and the universe. So the world is real when it is experienced as the self, and unreal when it is seen as separate names and forms? Just as fire is obscured by smoke, the shining light of consciousness is obscured by the assemblage of names and forms, the world. When by compassionate divine grace the mind becomes clear, the nature of the world will be known to be not the illusory forms, but the only reality. Only those people whose minds are devoid of the evil power of Maya, having given up the knowledge of the world and being unattached to it, and having thereby attained the knowledge of the self-shining supreme reality, can correctly know the meaning of the statement, the world is real. If one's outlook has been transformed to the nature of real knowledge, the world of the five elements, beginning with ether, akasa, will be real, being the supreme reality which is the nature of knowledge. The original state of this empty world, which is bewildering and crowded with many names and forms, is bliss, which is one, just as the egg yolk of a multicolored peacock is only one. Know this truth by abiding in the state of self. I cannot say it is all clear to me. Is the world that is seen, felt, and sensed by us in so many ways something like a dream, an illusion? There is no alternative for you but to accept the world as unreal if you are seeking the truth and the truth alone. Why so? For the simple reason that unless you give up the idea that the world is real, your mind will always be after it. If you take the appearance to be real, you will never know the real itself, although it is the real alone that exists. This point is illustrated by the analogy of the snake and the rope. You may be deceived into believing that a piece of rope is a snake. While you imagine that the rope is a snake, you cannot see the rope as a rope. The non-existent snake becomes real to you, while the real rope seems wholly non-existent as such. It is easy to accept tentatively that the world is not ultimately real, but it is hard to have the conviction that it is really unreal. Even so, is your dream world real while you are dreaming? So long as the dream lasts, everything you see and feel in it is real. Is then the world no better than a dream? What is wrong with the sense of reality you have while you are dreaming? You may be dreaming of something quite impossible, for instance, of having a happy chat with a dead person. Just for a moment, you may doubt in the dream, saying to yourself, was he not dead? But somehow your mind reconciles itself to the dream vision, and the person is as good as alive for the purposes of the dream. In other words, the dream as a dream does not permit you to doubt its reality. It is the same in the waking state, for you are unable to doubt the reality of the world which you see while you are awake. How can the mind, which has itself created the world, accept it as unreal? That is the significance of the comparison made between the world of the waking state and the dream world. Both are creations of the mind, and so long as the mind is engrossed in either, it finds itself unable to deny the reality. It cannot deny the reality of the dream world while it is dreaming, and it cannot deny the reality of the waking world while it is awake. If, on the contrary, you withdraw your mind completely from the world and turn it within and abide there, that is, if you keep awake always to the self, which is the substratum of all experiences, you will find the world of which you are now aware is just as unreal as the world in which you lived in your dream. We see, feel, and sense the world in so many ways. These sensations are the reactions to the objects seen and felt. They are not mental creations, as in a dream, which differ not only from person to person, but also with regard to the same person. Is that not enough to prove the objective reality of the world? All this talk about inconsistencies in the dream world arises only now, when you are awake. While you are dreaming, the dream was a perfectly integrated whole. That is to say, if you felt thirsty in a dream, the illusory drinking of illusory water quenched your illusory thirst. But all this was real and not illusory to you so long as you did not know that the dream itself was illusory. Similarly with the waking world. The sensations you now have get coordinated to give you the impression that the world is real. If, on the contrary, the world is a self-existent reality, that is what you evidently mean by its objectivity, what prevents the world from revealing itself to you in sleep? You do not say you do not exist in your sleep. Neither do I deny the world's existence while I am asleep. It has been existing all the while. If during my sleep I did not see it, others who were not sleeping saw it. To say you existed while asleep, was it necessary to call in the evidence of others so as to prove it to you? Why do you seek their evidence now? Those others can tell you of having seen the world during your sleep only when you yourself are awake. With regard to their own existence, it is different. On waking up, you say you had a sound sleep, and so to that extent you are aware of yourself in the deepest sleep, whereas you have not the slightest notion of the world's existence then, even now, while you are awake. Is it the world that says, I am real, or is it you? Of course I say it, but I say it of the world. Well, then, that world which you say is real is really mocking at you for seeking to prove its reality, while of your own reality you are ignorant. You want somehow or other to maintain that the world is real. What is the standard of reality? That alone is real which exists by itself, which reveals itself by itself, and which is eternal and unchanging. Does the world exist by itself? Was it ever seen without the aid of the mind? In sleep there is neither mind nor world. When awake there is the mind and there is the world. What does this invariable concomitance mean? You are familiar with the principles of inductive logic, which are considered the very basis of scientific investigation. Why do you not decide this question of the reality of the world in the light of those accepted principles of logic? Of yourself, you can say, I exist. That is, your existence is not mere existence. It is existence of which you are conscious. Really, it is existence identical with consciousness. The world may not be conscious of itself, yet it exists. Consciousness is always self-consciousness. If you are conscious of anything, you are essentially conscious of yourself. Unself-consciousness existence is a contradiction in terms. It is no existence at all. It is merely attributed existence, whereas true existence, the Sat, is not an attribute. It is the substance itself. It is the Vastu, reality. Reality is therefore known as Sat-Chit, being consciousness, and never merely the one to the exclusion of the other. The world neither exists by itself, nor is it conscious of its existence. How can you say that such a world is real? And what is the nature of the world? It is perpetual change, a continuous, interminable flux. A dependent, unself-conscious, ever-changing world cannot be real. Are the names and forms of the world real? You won't find them separate from the substratum adhisthana. When you try to get at name and form, you will find reality only. Therefore, attain the knowledge of that which is real for all time. Why does the waking state look so real? We see so much on the cinema screen, but it is not real. Nothing is real there except the screen. In the same way, in the waking state, there is nothing but adhisthana. Knowledge of the world is knowledge of the knower of the world. Jagrat Brahma is the Brahma of Jagrat Pramata. Both go away in sleep. Why do we see such permanency and constancy in the world? It is seen on account of wrong ideas. When someone says that he took a bath in the same river twice, he is wrong, because when he bathed for the second time, the river is not the same as it was when he bathed for the first time. On looking twice at the brightness of a flame, a man says that he sees the same flame, but this flame is ever changing every moment. The waking state is like this. The stationary appearance is an air of perception. Where is the air? Pramata, the knower. How did the knower come? On account of the air of perception. In fact, the knower and his misperceptions appear simultaneously, and when the knowledge of the self is obtained, they disappear simultaneously. From where did the knower and his misperceptions come? Who is asking the question? I am. Find out that I, and all your doubts will be solved. Just as in a dream of false knowledge, knower and known rise up, in the waking state the same process operates. In both states on knowing this I, you know everything and nothing remains to be known. In deep sleep, knower, knowledge, and known are absent. In the same way, at the time of experiencing the real I, they will not exist. Whatever you see happening in the waking state happens only to the knower. And since the knower is unreal, nothing in fact ever happens. Is it the light which gives the I sense identity and knowledge of the world ignorance, or Chit, consciousness? It is only the reflected light of Chit that makes the I believe itself different from others. This reflected light of Chit also makes the I create objects. But for this reflection there must be a surface on which the reflection takes place. What is that surface? On the realization of the self, you will find that the reflection and the surface on which it takes place do not actually exist, but that both of them are one and the same Chit. There is the world, which requires location for its existence and light to make it perceptible. Both rise simultaneously. Therefore, physical existence and perception depend upon the light of the mind which is reflected from the self. Just as cinema pictures can be made visible by reflected light, and only in darkness, so also the world pictures are perceptible only by the light of the self reflected in the darkness of avidya, ignorance. The world can be seen neither in the utter darkness of ignorance, as in deep sleep, nor in the utter light of the self, as in self-realization or samadhi.